Welcome to Powered 4 Big Fight Weekly, Episode 1. We had the pilot last week. We were very happy with what we put together, me and Chris. And you're going to have all the best of the action from the weekend, from the UFC, boxing, because the boxing's been getting back up and running in recent weeks too. And we're going to preview some stuff as well. We've got plenty for you. Going to hopefully do it fast-paced. How are you, Chris? How's stuff going?
I'm good. You?
All good, mate. All good. I think let's get straight into it, man. Curtis Blades versus Derek Lewis. Firstly, UFC Fight Night. What were your thoughts? We were a bit unsure last week, I think, because you just don't know the way it's going to go at heavyweight, do you? Sometimes.
That picture there in front of you just says 1,000 words, really, doesn't it?
Do you think Herb Dean could have got in faster? Some people said there were some shots there that didn't need to be landed because he was out.
Yeah, Herb Dean was slow off the mark because he took about 2 or 3 heavy shots when he was sleeping. Not good. Should have been a lot faster, which is not normally like Herb Dean. Herb Dean's usually on the ball, but with that uppercut itself was out the blue. Surprised everyone.
Derek did catch him early in the first round, I noticed, but he weathered it, didn't he, Blades? And then they were trading off as well. Good counter striking too. From Blades I saw in that first round. What were your thoughts of the first round, Chris?
I'm surprised at first because when we spoke about it last week, and I thought, Curtis Blades was going to go for takedown, grind it out on the floor and just pepper what you can and keep Derek Lewis down. And to be fair to him, he stood up and went for it strike-wise, and I was surprised. But when you mentioned that uppercut, you saw that in the first round when he was going for a takedown, and the warning sign was right there. And when you're looking at it, you're thinking, he catches you, and obviously he did catch him. But my God,
it was brutal. It was brutal, man. Bisping's like Derek Lewis can get hit, but he doesn't he can just pretend that he's hurt sometimes. He could make out he's worse than he actually is.
Good poker face.
Absolutely.
But that strike was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Blades was varying it though, mate. He was striking. He was striking high. He went for the legs as well with the striking, didn't he? He was trying to stop him. And then we get into round 2, and it was good defense from Lewis because he went 0 for 3 on takedowns, which is Blades' bread and butter, isn't it? Ordinarily, he stopped them takedowns, didn't he, Chris?
He did surprisingly well. We were talking just before the show about Daniel Cormier and how easily he took Derek Lewis down. And then you see the difference between an Olympian wrestler to an MMA wrestler. It's hard for Curtis Blades if he can't take a big man like that down. And he was doing fantastic with the strikes and he's backing up Lewis, but Lewis was always peppered him right for that right hand. And you see what happens when you don't look what you're doing and you go straight in for a double leg and get caught with an uppercut. And I think that Derek Lewis must have drilled that and seen that as his opportunity to win the fight.
As you alluded to earlier, he fainted. He went low the first time, and he didn't learn from it. That he ended up succumbing to one hell of an uppercut. But in fairness to Blades, I took up the striking percentages for both fighters. He was 53.9 on landed strikes to Derek Lewis's 30.4%. But we know Derek Lewis is battle tested and he can take the shots. But I just thought that was interesting, that percentage to me, Chris. What they were landing.
Derek Lewis is like, you say like the Diaz brothers, take one to give one. You know what I mean? And his give one is an almighty crash. I just like I say, I was off my seat and then didn't see it coming. Absolutely, a fantastic win for him. And now it works wonders going forward. Was a bit sketchy of his call out. Now, we spoke about Overeem a few weeks back after his loss to Volkov. And to me, he looked like he was finished. I don't see that fight necessarily need to be made. I don't think Overeem needs to step up.
Surely he's looking further at the rankings. He doesn't. No disrespect to Overeem, but there's guys.
No.
There's guys there. Does he feel he should be getting a title shot next? What do you think?
Again, we spoke about this last week. If Curtis Blades went, it's difficult because, like I say, you've got Ngannou and Miocic. They're fighting maybe it's next month or the month after, and then John Jones enters as a fray. It's a lot of pushback for Derek Lewis, who's now ranked spot 2, isn't he? And then Curtis Blades is 3rd. My off the top of my head, and I was thinking today, where does he go? Rolls right into this weekend's fight with Rovenstrike and Cain. Because it makes more sense now for him to face one of them. And then Blades maybe face the loser of that fight. I mean, it's hard. I look at the rankings and look thinking, where does he go? Where does he go? Where does he go? They're going to be quite stuck in the mud until John Jones and Ngannou and Miocic situations.
Yeah.
And that could be, like I said to you last week, that could be into next year for that to happen. But there's still fights to be made. And like I say, Rovenstrike again are no jokes. And you'll see that this weekend when we preview it. But that's a good fight for Lewis to have, one of them two.
The good thing is, mate, through the pandemic, the fights have still been getting made. And that's where the boxing promoters could learn from Dana White and Sean Shelby. They're still UFC is still putting together the decent, the top end matches coming up, as you say. The fights we've got scheduled, Chris. It's absolutely crazy.
Next weekend is a wild one.
Yeah, man.
But obviously, we'll get to that.
That'll be next week. We'll be previewing that one. Adesanya and Blachowicz.
Blockbusters.
Yeah. That's gonna be fantastic.
Sorry. Hold on, before we jump, I'll go jump you there, mate.
Yeah, no worries.
Derek Lewis made a record this weekend as well. He was joint top.
Do pray tell.
Yeah, I will. He joint top the most knockout wins with Vital Belfort with 12 knockout wins in entire UFC. And that's above your John Joneses. That's above your Anderson Silvas when Anderson Silva was in his peak.
Just when he was hammering everyone for all them years, man.
Yeah.
How many years?
What for Anderson Silva? You're looking
It's a long time, wasn't it?
About 10 years, wasn't it?
Crazy.
But, I mean, to do best everybody else above you or below you was good for him.
I'm going to segue now into another match, which was the opener for the main card. And we previewed this last week. And what a fantastic result for our UK man. Team Cabon, Liverpool, Tom Aspinall versus Andrei Arlovski. We previewed it beforehand last week. What a performance from Tom Aspinall in his 3rd UFC fight. It was a big test. What were your thoughts on that one, Chris?
Really impressed. When I spoke to you last week, I wasn't. When you were saying, does he rush him? He absolutely did rush him.
Yeah,
but he made him pay. He did get caught, and he alluded to this in his post-match fight. That he caught him right in the corner of the eye, and he couldn't see. But you wouldn't have told that, or wouldn't have told that, because he just went hammering tons. He had that, was it 8 or 9 strike combination up against the fence, and Arlovski took it. Obviously, he's a veteran. He's been through so many wars. But looking at it, Tom Aspinall, fantastic. The only issue I've got with this is Arlovski did not look himself. Like, didn't want to be there at all. I don't know if you saw that when you watched it.
I just thought he got bested personally, but I think what I did see, and Bisping alluded to it, Tom Aspinall is fast with the striking.
Oh yeah,
for a heavyweight, for all that weight he's carrying, the hand speed. I mean, I know Arlovski, they did trade in round 1 for a bit. I know you'd say Aspinall. I gave it Aspinall 10-9 that first round.
Yeah, marginally, yeah.
Yeah. How did you see it?
I agree with you, but I was a bit worried. I thought he emptied the gas can right in the last minute when he got up in the cage and he just unloaded on Arlovski, and I was a bit like, right, second round is going to be a bit. But he didn't have any problems with that. Second round, did his bit, went for the power takedown or the double leg, and submit Arlovski, and with ease though as well, which is shocking.
I was waiting for that to be sunk in longer. That was a quick submission. That I was not expecting him to tap out so quickly.
No, because if you look at the actual rear naked choke itself, it wasn't, like it was on his back, and he had his legs around him to squeeze. That was power, a rear naked choke. Less finesse, but a lot of power in that. But I was really shocked how Arlovski, it's like he wanted to get out of there ASAP. Didn't want a part of it.
Where next for Tom Aspinall? We're going to be keeping a close eye on him being UK. It's great, as we said last week. It's fantastic having a UK heavyweight in there. Where next for him? What would be a good fight for him to be matched in? If you're Dana White and Sean Shelby, where would you put him next?
He already answered. He answered this already in his post fight.
Okay.
We had Olinek and Dukas, who fought later on in the card. And Dukas knocked out Olinek with strikes. I think I should. I should have watched that fight back really, but he called out the winner of that fight. He said he didn't want Lewis or Blades because they're too far ahead of him.
That's a fair assumption on where the division is. I think that'd be the next one maybe for him. No, he's got plenty of time. He's not. How old is he? 27. He's not like he's got years. He's got years, man.
Yeah, definitely. Right. So Durkas obviously went, and he's ranked 10th. Tom Aspinall's ranked 15th. It's a good spot then because he breaks straight into the top 10.
Yeah.
And that Durkas has only had 3 fights himself in the UFC, but they're all TKO stoppages. So it's a good match setup for him because, again, I haven't seen much of Durkas myself to say, well, has he got a ground game? Because he might. But if he's just a striking game, Aspinall could use that to his advantage and then take him down. It's interesting, and I think it's a good fight for him to break in.
As you say, he knows where he's got to go next, rather than jumping in and taking on people in the top 5 or 6. It's just not the progression, is it? Yet, but as you say, if he takes on
up there though,
oh my days, it's different level at the moment. All them guys.
He could take on an Overeem if Overeem wants to stand around and still be a part of the UFC in a heavyweight division. But then that again is quite a dangerous, because if he can't take Overeem down, Overeem can hit you with multiple strikes, his knees. So it's good for him. And I think if Durkas is 10th, as I'm looking at, then it's a good break into the top 10, and then he can start then to grind his way up to the top.
I'm gonna preview now this weekend's card. It's another UFC fight night again. It's Jairzinho Rozenstruik of Suriname, where all of the top Dutch players came from Suriname, where Rozenstruik's from. Like your Ruud Hullits. I'm trying to think who else. I've lost it. Frank Rijkaard. It was a Dutch colony. I think Edgar Davids was born there. Anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about football, but I thought I'd just put that little piece of info into you. So 11-1. Jairzinho Rozenstruik takes on 7-0 France's own Cyril Gain in what is set to be a huge heavyweight battle. What are your thoughts on that one?
It's funny, isn't it? I feel like we've been talking about this fight for a good couple of weeks.
And he was in your top 3 to watch, even though we only covered two of your fighters last week.
Cyril Gain. Holland.
Cyril, you bigged up Cyril Gain, didn't you, last week?
It's an interesting fight. I don't know much if Rozenstruik actually has a ground game. Obviously, his strikes are phenomenal. You've seen enough in his fights that he can finish, he can hurt you bad. Cyril Gain can do the same, but also mix it up and take you down and submit you. But, the plus side for Cyril is his training partner is Francis Ngannou, who wiped the floor with Rozenstruik last year within I think it was a minute. So it's a plus point that he can, take the notes of Ngannou, even though it wasn't much of a fight you can really pick out because it was wham bam thank you ma'am. But no, it'll be an absolute firework because Rozenstruik's going to come to strike hard, and Cyril Gain, he's top heavy but can take you down and really, really play games with Rozenstruik.
It's the mix of knocking people out for Cyril Gain. And he has sub people as well. But like you said, Rozenstruik's never. It's always been striking with Rozenstruik, so it'd be interesting to see if he tries it as well, maybe.
I haven't seen many people go for much takedowns with Rozenstruik because he's fast, isn't he? Very elusive and fluid with his leg kicks. Being a kickboxer himself, fast. It's a tough one, Cyril Gain, because obviously he's only had 3 fights. Rozenstruik's had a few more now, and he's fought, one of the best in the world in Francis Ngannou. Minus, it was only a few minutes. or seconds even for him. I know it'd be good to see where Cyril Gain lands now if he can win the fight. But like I say, because then one of them potentially can give Derek Lewis a fight, and then one of them who loses could give Blades a fight. So it's nice opened up in that division now. The only problem is where do you put Volkov?
I tell you what, you touched upon Rosenstrike's kickboxing career. He had 80 odd fights at kickboxing level, but Cyril Gain was a kickboxer. He didn't have as many fights, but previous to coming into MMA, they've both got that kickboxing background. All right, Rosenstrike's had about 70 odd more fights than him. Could that be a factor?
I don't know, because if you look at Stephen Thompson's kickboxing record, it's over the hundreds. That he's won a fight, and and in his first couple of fights against, Mike Brown was his second fight in, and he got bested striking. So
it doesn't really.
I think
when you're coming into MMA, it doesn't really stand for anything because you've got all the styles coming at you, haven't you? Different styles.
Yeah, but you've also got coaches who can, they watch videotapes, don't they? And then they lay on then to set them for what you do during the fight. I mean, for me, if you're Cyril Gain, you test the waters, don't you? See what you can take first. But obviously don't be stupid and then go for the takedown and then obviously try and submit Rosenstrike. The Rosenstrike could easily blast through that. TKO, KO, Gain, and Gain's got to start again and Rosenstrike's on the up. But then again, saying that, I'd like to see Lewis and Rosenstrike as a battle. That would be fireworks.
Do you know what, Chris? It's been good having all these heavyweight bouts going on in quick succession. Like I said, I didn't touch upon Olenek, didn't touch upon that, but that was another one that they had on the card on Saturday. But it's great. It's great seeing a load of heavyweight guys coming through, and you're just expecting a big knockout in all the fights. I've enjoyed it.
A lot of them are younger now, so the mainstays seem to passing the torch on now. The likes of Overeem, Junior Dos Santos, even though he was still good against Cyril Gain when they fought. You've seen a new rise and a new wave of heavyweights, which is really good because the division's been quite lackluster for a while. Well, obviously going to be a big jump when John Jones gets in there then, though, mind you.
What about, do you know what, mate? Because we missed it last week. We got time here. We're good for time. We didn't touch upon one of your ones to watch. We covered two of your ones to watch out your three, and it was Kevin Holland was one that we didn't touch upon. I jumped to another segment of the show last week. So I think you could talk a little bit about Kevin Holland because you didn't get a chance last week, and your thoughts on him coming through as one of your ones to watch.
Fantastic. You mean to KO Jacare Souza on the floor the way he did? Incredible. No one likes to go on the floor with Jacare Souza. You've seen it time and time again. His jiu-jitsu is masterful, beautiful. Did it throughout the whole of his Strikeforce fighting career. Obviously, I think for Jacare is on a bit of a slippery slope now. But, to do what he did against a seasoned veteran, fantastic. He's another one I feel like at middleweight is going to make a big dive. He's only 28 himself as well, which is young. I'd like to see him in Israel. He made his He made his debut in 2018, and that was against Thiago Santos, who obviously went up then to light heavyweight. In big John
test.
Jones, really big fight. His next fight is against Derek Brunson, who's usually the guy that is the door before you go in.
Yeah. It's still a tough test. It's still a tough test for him, though, isn't it, Brunson? He's got a lot of experience. He's got a lot. He's a good, solid hand, isn't he? In that division, as you say.
Yeah, he'll work you, and I think if you can beat Derek Brunson, you know where you can go then. But it's then Israel if he's going to obviously fight next weekend for the light heavyweight title. What's he going to do with the middleweight if he's to win next week? Because I'd like to see if Kevin Holland can progress the way he is. I'd like to see that fight because Styles is fantastic, and as you know, Styles makes fights.
That's it, man. Anybody who's watching, please put your comments in. It's not just about me and Chris. We want to hear your thoughts on stuff that's going on. So I implore you to get some comments in. Also, I think we can talk about the fight on March the 8th a little bit. We've got time. Adesanya and Blachowicz at light heavyweight. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts? We'll do a preview before we go to break.
Preview, all right?
Because we're gonna preview it next week, but there's plenty to talk about with that, and then we'll go to break after we've done this one.
Interesting, isn't it? You know, I mean, you can see why he's going up, you know. And there seems to be like this big thing that everyone wants to be a champ these days. Conor set the tone for that, didn't he, really? He's chasing John Jones, I think. In the back of my mind, that's a wink to John Jones. If he can beat Juan, that's a wink to John Jones to say, come back down. Because I can't see him following him to heavyweight. That's a bit too much. And if you look at Israel, I don't think he's got that body structure like John Jones does, you know, to go up that, you know, the heavier weight class. Interesting, because you know Lambovic can punch and he can take it down. I mean, he's a good all rounder, but he hasn't got the same skill set as Israel. I'm sorry, and I know I'm going to sound very biased, but he's got everything, hasn't he? The kicks, the strikes, his timing is fantastic.
I would term him a new age hybrid of Anderson. Obviously, he's fought Anderson. That was like, you know, I want to fight him. And Anderson took too many fights at the end, but I think he wanted to help these younger guys. He wanted to get in there with him. But I didn't agree. I didn't agree with them fights, you know. But you know, it's like a hybrid of John Jones as well. If you're gonna factor in how he is and stylistically, but it's just different. It's just different class. It's just different again. It just goes to show how fast MMA can move on and stuff changes, the styles.
Another kickboxer as well.
Yeah.
The only thing difference between John Jones and Israel is John Jones has got the wrestling side of things. And when John Jones wants to use it, 9 times out of 10, he gets people to the ground. Obviously, that's a tip of everyone's tongue. Everyone would love to see that fight. I'd like to see that fight. It's a fight to be made, but it's hard now to see the fight actual happening. If John Jones going up, obviously this all depends on how John Jones gets on, you know, later on in the year at heavyweight. But no, it's a good setup, but it's a good storyline between them two because they hate each other. And watching them on Twitter is fantastic, like the back and forth. You know, I mean, it's worse than it was with Daniel Cormier, and some things are said quite badly between that rivalry.
And that set the precedent. All that stuff like where the punches were getting thrown and that background was just flopping around everywhere. Do you know what I will say? I'll take it. These fights, I've spoken to you about this over the last couple of days. As the boxing is getting shown in Florida in a stadium, why have they not done it in the UFC? Do you not think? What? Because there's so many venues in Florida where they could have like 20,000 in a 65, 70,000, 80,000 arena stadium. And obviously, you know, they get ticket money then. So the purses are obviously going to be better, aren't they, from the ticket money and the gate and all that? Why don't you think they've tried to run some in the big stadiums? Like, because you're allowed in Florida. We've seen it with the Super Bowl. WrestleMania is going to be at Tampa as well, at Raymond James. Why hasn't Dana thought of that? Why are they still doing it, you know, behind closed doors at the Performance Center?
Well, yeah, from what I've read and I've listened to, you know, Dana White in his conferences, he has alluded to Florida as being a place to go. But I think, you know, for their big fights at the moment, they're really high on Abu Dhabi, aren't they? And you've got to think of the income and how much they're paid to go there.
Yeah. They don't need the ticket. They don't need the ticket revenue there, do they, as such?
And they've got that new stadium, didn't they, that Conor and Poirier fought in.
Which,
looks really nice, didn't it?
Yeah, it was incredible.
And no, I think they will. I think it's finding the right fight, isn't it? And I think it's, at the moment, you can put the cards on in the Performance Center. You don't need to go all out over the USA because everyone can come to Vegas, can't they? And then your big cars and your overseas fighters can go to Abu Dhabi. I think, I think maybe once everything calms down with, the virus, I think you'll probably see UFC leaning towards going to Florida. And then you're putting on other fights on there and then probably easing its way through the States.
I would say Texas, but after all the snow and all the storms they've had this past few weeks, because Texas was a place to go. Like, Luke Campbell and Ryan Garcia boxed at the in Dallas indoor actually at the time. It was loose. It was very loose in Texas to have shows, wasn't it? As well, but at the moment they can't do it. But it'd be nice. It'd just be nice to see it with fans in. I mean, even if it is 20,000, they'll still make enough noise, won't they?
Just regarding to Texas and Houston, Was that because Derek Lewis's hot balls were in Texas to cool down the snow?
I did like that little statement you said. That little snippet. Yeah, it was funny. That typical of him. That and after his win.
Yeah, lovable character.
Yeah, he is fantastic. Right, when we come back, we'll be talking boxing after this short break for Powered 4 TV for you to subscribe on demand. Here we go. The fantastic Chicagoland there on demand on Power 4 TV, along with other US promotions and UK promotions too. So yeah, please check out Power 4 TV for all of that and podcasts too. Right, the boxing recap, and it was on Saturday evening. I know you watched this too, Chris. It was the European Welterweight title bout between David Avanesyan. I still can't say it. Avanesyan and Josh Kelly. I got it there. Here we go. Right, yeah. The things that are now the graphic. There we go. So, yeah, we both watched this. And I think I did touch upon it last week. I was worried for Josh Kelly because he's only had 11 fights. I did think the experience advantage would be with the other guy. I did say this. And it told he wasn't doing bad in the early rounds, Chris. Josh Kelly. He was looking slick. But I think that there wasn't enough substance in the later rounds.
Well, we were talking, didn't we? We were talking during the fight. Josh Kelly looked really good in the first 2 rounds. You know, it looked like he was taking control of the fight. But I mean, it was a turning point for Avanesyan, whatever the bloody name is.
Avanesyan. It's just
Avanesyan. Oh, there you go. Avanesyan.
Yeah.
He took the fight. He turned it around in round 3, didn't he? He took complete control.
It's pressure.
It looked like
he was backing it. He was backing him up. Like even when they were in the center of the ring, you know, it wasn't even. Yeah, they were getting to the ropes and he was pressuring. But Josh Kelly looked great. I'd even say up to like round 4. But Gareth A. Davis touched upon it. You know, he said that he's got to have the substance when he's fighting at that level. You can have all the style. You can be quick, slick. He's got to be able to take those punches, especially at that level if he's going to progress. And look, it's only his first loss. I've heard people like poo-pooing him and saying that's him done. And it would have possibly been him and Conor Benn. And Conor Benn's now turned around and said, "Well, I'm not going to fight him." You know, he's got Samuel Vargas coming up. But I was looking forward to Conor Benn and Josh Kelly. You know, a UK title fight, but.
Is he not jumping the gun here, Conor Benn? Because what's to say he doesn't lose his fight?
He could,
and then it makes sense for them to fight, then, doesn't it?
There's nothing better than a British dust-up for me. I think we do it the best when it's UK versus UK over other countries. We have for years, but maybe he is a bit overconfident. Conor Benn. He's got to beat Samuel Vargas yet. Samuel Vargas has had a lot of fights. He's fought people. So yeah, it's tough. But yeah, as I say, the fight was just absolutely. It went one way, then the other, didn't it? And Adam Booth threw the towel in, which some of the fans said the towel should have been thrown in, but I don't agree. I think the towel should have been thrown in. It's just, it could be irreparable damage for Josh Kelly going forward. If they don't throw the towel in.
But it shows you difference in the Josh Warrington fight, doesn't it? They threw the towel in at the right time.
Yeah, that's fair to say. Yeah, I think with Avanesyan, it was just he showed his experience as we alluded to last week. You know, when you're talking a man of 30 odd fights, he's only lost 3. It just went to show, I think, in the end. But I think Josh Kelly can come back from it, but they're going to have to be careful who they're going to be putting him in there with. I think he needs a couple of tune-up fights, and I'm sure they'll.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll
learn from it, won't he?
They'll be looking. You know, they'll take stock of where it went wrong. So
yeah, you'll learn from it. I mean, some of the greatest fighters lose a couple of fights before, you know, they find themselves at the top of the food chain.
That's it, man.
See what happens.
And then we go to Saturday, American time, Sunday, UK for us, early hours as per usual. And we've got Canelo Alvarez defending the WBC and WBA super middleweight titles against Yildirim, which is, on paper, the fans have said it too, it's an absolute mismatch with Yildirim getting in there. Yildirim hasn't had a fight in 2 years. Chris Eubank beat him in the World Series of Boxing in 2017 too. People are saying, why is this fight happening? Alvarez shouldn't be fighting this guy. It needs to be somebody else. But here again, I think it's just a tune-up for Alvarez, ready for Billy Joe Saunders, because Billy Joe Saunders has got a belt at super middleweight, so it'd be to unify, won't it? I think he's just having a tune-up fight. But I think Billy Joe's going to need a tune-up fight as well, because he last fought in December. He was against Martin Murray, who was an absolute tank for years in the division. So I just think it's that they're saying, a lot of the fans are saying, why is he fighting Yildirim? But I think they're just trying to keep Canelo active, Chris, if I'm honest.
When do, say, obviously Canelo wins this fight on the weekend, when do you see him and Billy Joe Saunders taking place their fight?
That's not going to be till you got to be looking at September, October, haven't you? For him to box again, and they need a 12-week camp, don't they? They need 12 weeks for training, so they need 3 months. I just can't at super middleweight. I just can't see. I think Canelo. I can't see Billy Joe beating him. And Billy Joe's fantastic. He's 30. I just can't see. I can't see Canelo losing. He's been on an absolute tear in that division. He made Callum Smith. Smith succumb. You know, Callum Smith quite big at super middle. You know, he's tall. He had the range, and he just outboxed him. He's an absolute tank, Canelo. But I don't.
What's his future though?
Well,
if he beats Billy Joe, does he go? Where does he go?
They're looking at Beterbiev, and he's light heavy, and they reckon Canelo is dodging him, and his promoters are dodging to take that fight because it's light heavy. But it means Canelo's got to go up a weight to fight him. You read all this stuff. I don't tend to believe it, but they reckon he's shirking that fight going up to light heavy. But I mean, Canelo's gone up the weights. Do you know what I mean? He fought Mayweather at 147 pounds at welterweight. I don't think he's got anything to prove. I don't think he's got to go up another weight, if I'm honest. It's going to be hard.
It's a big jump though, isn't it?
Yeah, Beterbiev, that's his natural weight at the end of the day. And he's a great boxer. He's WBC and IBF champion at light heavyweight. But yeah, they're alleging that he's dodging that one. But I don't know. I think he's still got fights at super middle. And then they were saying about Demetrius Andrade as well, in fighting him, Canelo. I've read some people saying, why doesn't he fight him? But I think it'll be Billy Joe first, going back to that. But he's still
got fights, hasn't he? He's still got fights in that division.
I think it's going to be a step too far going up to light heavy from super middle for him. Because he is going to be undersized, definitely even more so going up in there. So it'll be interesting to see. It will be interesting to see. Right, we do a feature every week, and we kind of change it around. We did one last week, didn't we, Chris? Your top 3 fighters to watch. Favorite fights. Now I'm going to start with you, and we'll talk about the UFC. We'll go back to the UFC now. This is like our last segment of the show. So yeah, fire away, Chris.
And first one I've gone for is Pat Barry versus Czech Congo. Do you remember that fight?
I remember it well. But yeah, just I think recap it for the viewers. What actually happened in that fight?
Insanity. It's like when we touched on Arlovski and Travis Brown last week. It's one of those fights that happens every so often, and you don't know which way it's going. The pendulum is swinging back and forward. And in that fight, I thought Congo was about 6 or 7 times. Pat Barry looked like he was out 6 or 7 times, and they kept on getting back up. Oh, it was incredible. You couldn't get off your chair because it's like, holy shit.
Pat Barry was like 5'11". I know Cormier's roughly the same height, isn't he? Obviously, he was doing in the division below and then came up to heavyweight. But yeah, Pat Barry at 5'11". I remember the fight very well. I do remember the fight.
It was an incredible fight. Obviously, Czech Congo won in the end.
Yeah.
I look at this day and age, I don't think the referees would have kept that fight going the amount of times, when they were getting dropped and not getting back up, but getting back up. Oh, it was incredible. And I think that, that's a pioneer for the sport. Oh, it's one of those fights, if you haven't watched it, go on YouTube and watch Czech Congo versus Pat Barry.
And as much as we like the title tilts and the fights for the titles, a lot of the time it is the fights on the lower end of the card that produce these moments, don't they? Yeah, there's some incredible title fights. I'm not disputing that, but a lot of the big fights were lower in the card, weren't they? Some of the ones that stand out, in the greatest fights in history in the UFC.
But there can be cases where the prelims are better than the main card, and that's happened quite a lot over the years. You look at those people, they're coming to bring it. They're coming to get noticed. A big audience. You could be on a Conor McGregor card, and millions and millions of people are watching.
They've got more. They've got more to prove, Chris, haven't they? It's their shot, and it might be their only shot. So yeah, I do take with that on the prelims. Fire away with another one, and then I'll come in after you. I don't know if we're
going to have to say. We should have asked each other which ones we added.
No, it'll be all right. We'll have different ones, I reckon.
I'm going to go with one of my favourite fighters in his heyday is Cain Velasquez versus Brock Lesnar. Interesting,
And we've lost Chris. So in the meantime, one of the fights that I picked in the UFC was between Clay Guida and Diego Sanchez, which led the UFC Fight Hall of Fame wing. It went into the Hall of Fame. One of the greatest fights I've ever seen on telly. They just went at it. They were striking for all those rounds, for the 3 rounds. Incredible. Still holds up today. It's absolutely fantastic. And we have lost Chris. And I needed him. Is he back? Here he is. Chris?
No. It's been a pain again.
It's all right. Just speak, mate. Just speak. It's okay.
Where are we up to? Sorry.
It's all right. It's okay. Carry on, mate. And I'll go back to it again. Yeah, Clay Guida versus Diego Sanchez. Fantastic fight. Just absolute carnage for 3 rounds. And similarly, Clay Guida fought Roger Huerta. I think it was prior to that, 2007, 2008. Similar sort of fight again. Could have gone either way. Clay Guida actually lost both fights, but he's still one of my favourite fighters because he left it all in the octagon. Fantastic for a fan. Really, really good. And then into more recent times, it was the 2 fights between Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor. Absolutely brilliant. So well done. The story beforehand, the supposed hatred that sold the fight. And I think a lot of people thought Conor was going to beat him in that first fight, and he got submitted. And it was like, wow, where does he go from here? And then they had the fight signed. And Conor in the second fight fought a different type of fight. He was a lot more cautious, but he boxed clever in that fight as well against one of the best punchers in the division at the time at welter and lightweight for that matter. So yeah, both those fights were incredible for me as well. Segueing into boxing, I've got to say in more recent times, the 2 fights between Fury and Wilder, I think, as we all know, Fury was screwed. I'll just finish this. Fury was screwed in the first fight. I know he was put down twice, but he outboxed him 10 rounds, definitely. I know there was the 2 knockdowns. And then changed his trainer, went with Sugar Hill for the second fight, and just absolutely boxed totally different, used power against the biggest power puncher in the heavyweight division and proved a lot of doubters wrong. I know a lot of people thought Wilder was going to come through in the second fight and win. So yeah, never mind. Back to you, Chris.
Well, how long for is the question?
We've got plenty of time.
I went for Cain Velasquez and Brock Lesnar before my webcam rudely interrupted me. And I picked that fight because, for one, obviously I was a big Cain Velasquez fan in his heyday, at the peak of sea-level Cain. And the reason they called him sea-level Cain is because his cardio for a heavyweight was monstrous. And obviously it was a defining fight for me, for Cain, because that was his lift-off. Yeah, obviously, I don't regard Brock Lesnar as a fan favourite in my eyes in UFC. I think he was handed the title when the division was very shallow. When he obviously was the champion, the youngsters were coming through at the time. You had your Dos Santos and Cain Velasquez, who obviously eventually would meet and turn into 3 trilogy fights. But that fight proved that Brock Lesnar shouldn't be in the octagon. I know he fought over him after that, and then obviously retired himself.
I think, but Chris, to be fair to him, I know we spoke about this previously. He did have the diverticulitis like Lesnar, and the trainers were telling him, weren't they, prior, do not take the fight, and he went for that fight. He nearly died. Not to say Overeem might still have beaten him, but I think a fully fit Brock, it might be a different outcome. We'll never know. We'll never know with that. But he shouldn't have been in there, should he? He should have been in the octagon.
To be fair, though, and it was dangerous for him, who's facing Overeem with cocktails, wasn't he? Yeah, he was. He wasn't facing. He was facing the monster.
Yeah.
Lloyd Overeem that was destroying everyone, but wasn't getting drug tested. You look at the size of Overeem in that fight to where he looks like now. That's a difference. To go back to Cain Velasquez and Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
They destroyed him. But he wasn't like a Shane Carwin, even though I think Shane Carwin got unlucky in that fight against Brock Lesnar, especially when he had them down at the fences, and I think the referee should have called it there. Cain Velasquez took his time, and he took the wrestling and took Brock Lesnar down, which again was shocking because no one ever did that.
It's massive because where he was, he was Division 1. He was Division 1 at collegiate level. Lesnar, that's no mean feat getting him down, is it? Many have tried and many haven't been able to do. But yeah, as you say, got him down, didn't he?
The historic thing is when you watch that fight, and it always plays in my head, is when he hits Brock and Brock's crawling like a sort of weird cartwheel along to the other side of the octagon. You know what I mean? Incredible. But obviously that set Cain up, for the Dos Santos' trilogies, which were incredible. Obviously then injuries plagued him, and you saw him off into WWE and what have you. And it's a shame, obviously.
That just didn't take off, though. I don't want to, focus on the wrestling.
No,
we're covering combat sports, but that was. He was only there for a little bit, but it just didn't work. I think they were looking for like how they did with Ronda coming over, but
he lost his his sparkle at that point. Now, Cain went over to WWE after fighting his last win against Travis Brown was at the UFC 200, which is 2016.
Had he not have been plagued by injuries, how do you think he would have done? Would he have cemented his legacy at the top of the pile as champion? Do you think at that time, or were the guys coming through that stopped him? I know in the heavyweight division, anyone can stop anyone. But what you thought?
Yeah.
If we had a fully fit Cain, what do you think?
Yeah, he would have steamrolled everyone. I think he was. If you watch back to his fights like against Czech Congo, he did get caught and he did get put on wobbly legs now and again. Dos Santos did it to him as well, and obviously Dos Santos DKO'd him. But my worry is if he fought Ngannou properly, not the last fight he fought in UFC, because he blew his knee out in that fight himself. If he fought, Pete Cain versus Pete Ngannou, that might have been a danger fight because obviously Francis Ngannou can, like Derek Lewis, can destroy you with one punch. I would have loved to see him against Miocic at peak because I think that would have been outstanding. Both can box, both can wrestle, both are good going back as well. It's like the old Chop Liddell used to be, when you used to rush him, but fantastic going back with his kicks and punches. And his timing was, it's just a shame. And, that I think him and Cormier, aka, trained too hard. That's the sort of impression I get. And the injuries obviously took the toll. And his back injuries after back injuries. And this is just obviously the shame he went out on a limper. Considering what he did for heavyweight at the time.
Did you pick any bouts in boxing? Because I opened it up did you pick any fights that you can remember?
The only ones obviously I'm going more recent because obviously it's more in my head was you were talking about Tyson Fury and Dante Wilder. I've watched both of them. I'm obviously just pulled in by Tyson Fury's character. Fantastic. I mean, I don't know as much as you say about boxing. I pick up where you tell me to go. But you could see that Dante Wilder was one hell of a power puncher. It didn't seem like he had anything else other than that overhand, right?
I think he did well in Fury's camp getting Sugar Hill in. Not to take a knock on Ben Davison, but he was like a PT type of guy. Yeah, he can train boxing, but I think they made the right choice. John Fury's gone on record about it. I think that change for his camp helped him as well. But he power punched the heaviest puncher in the division, allegedly. But I can go back. It doesn't have to be something so modern. Let's go right back. I can go back. The Rumble in the Jungle. I know it happened in the 70s, but my dad used to show me all the old boxing fights. What a fight out in Zaire. They went out to Africa for that. It was roasting hot out there, humidity, everything was going on. And back in them days, they boxed 15 rounds, and it's just everyone, I think, had George Foreman blowing him out, the barrage of punches, how heavy he could hit. I remember us watching the documentary on it when we were kids, and like Ali, I don't think they were giving Ali a hope, but Ali boxed his fight, came through it, and beat him. That's an iconic moment. I wish I was born when that happened. There's so many fights. When Bruno
should be old.
When Bruno fought Tyson in 1990, obviously I was only 4 at the time, and I always remember what my dad said about that. Bruno was too soft. He had Tyson at one point there, and he just couldn't seal the deal. And then Tyson, went on to win. And I know more latterly when Tyson came out of prison, they had the second fight, didn't they? But yeah, Frank, I love Frank Bruno, and it was good.
Loved his laugh.
It was good. It was good when he actually got the world title, when he beat Oliver McCall as well. At least he got.
Don't forget you've got the documentary of Tyson and Bruno coming up on Sky.
Absolutely. This Friday on Sky Documentaries, which is fantastic. What brilliant that they put that together. So I'm looking forward to watching that. Absolutely. Anything else in the UFC? Any other bouts come to mind?
Did you mention McGregor and Alvarez? And I think for me that's the last time you saw a fluid striker in Conor McGregor. Because I haven't seen him since that fight. He's been someone else since that fight.
I said about the 2 Diaz fights I did, and just how he lost it, but it was the build up, the supposed hatred beforehand, which obviously sells it. And him getting, I got up. I always get up for the big fights, and just when he got choked out, but then he got him. He was totally different in the second fight, wasn't he? He was a lot more cautious, Conor, but he did very well, didn't he?
Because you got to look at Conor McGregor's problem in the first fight against Diaz. He was meant to be facing Dos Anjos for the lightweight title at that time after he just beat Aldo in 15 seconds. And it was a 6-day, short notice fight against a durable, rangy striker with, again, really good jiu-jitsu, and obviously has cardio for days and can take a punch. And we can go on and on about what the Diaz brothers bring to the table. For him, it was arrogance and cockiness, thinking he's just beat Aldo. I can come in this, and my left hand sinks everybody. And if it regards to the Diaz, just ate it. Just, laughed at him, pointed and slapped him. And it just show, well, it's just Diaz for you. You know what I mean? Both are renowned for slapping you in the face and pointing and laughing, which again, must have infuriated being a fighter on the other side of them. The second fight, I thought Conor and John Kavanagh were better at organising to go for the leg. It was very close. I think a lot of people would say Diaz won. As well, there's a lot of people would say Conor McGregor won that fight.
It just depends.
It
depends how you view it. Yeah, absolutely. Look at the judges get nailed sometimes for what they decide, but it's hard because, as you say, you might like a certain style and you might see it totally different to somebody else. It's so hard. But I tell you what, at the end of the day, like him or hate him, he's the biggest cash cow they're probably ever going to have in UFC, surely.
Maybe. You don't know. Chuck the OTs were cash cows.
He was just right. He was right place.
Right at the time.
Time.
He was.
Timing was everything. The persona. It was very pro wrestling. All the promo he
Chael Sonnen-esque.
Yeah. And Chael Sonnen's fantastic on the stick like that. I think Conor just different. It was just different level because you hadn't seen it before. But yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what he does next after the loss.
Well, just to quickly go back to obviously Alvarez and Conor, because obviously we touched on that first. Now, my thing is with that fight is you saw the real Conor at lightweight, the timing with that left and his right. You know, how he finished him with the 4-strike combination, and he dropped him 3 times in the first round, and he didn't look like he was out of first gear. Yeah, that was the last time, I think, for me. And since then, he fought Floyd, didn't he? And then he fought Khabib, and then obviously he had all that trouble in between Khabib, not just the rivalry between them, but just what was going on outside. And obviously,
I still maintain that was all set up to sell the fight. That was a setup. All that.
Oh, do you mean with the
trolley and all that? Yeah, of course it was.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm not.
Dana.
I
no, I know that, but I'm just saying about how they built up him versus Khabib. Yeah, of course he did. It was
they WWE'd it, didn't they?
Dana White making I'm going to bollock him and all this. Like you knew full well you was set. It was a setup.
Like that one afterwards. Thanks, Conor.
It's for buy rates. It's for selling it. At the end of the day, you got to sell it, haven't you?
I just haven't seen the same Conor. I think Conor gave Khabib his best fight out of everybody.
It doesn't need money. He pulled in that 100 mil from Mayweather. They were set beforehand, weren't they? But just doesn't need to. I think it's just when they ask him, do you want to come in and do it, and he can't say no. Maybe.
I don't know. I still think he's still got that fire and a desire to fight. You watch the Poirier fight, and if you can look at the image of Conor McGregor's stance against Alvarez and Conor McGregor's stance against Poirier, it's gone from that karate stance where he was fluid and everything was good with his timing. He knew when to strike, when to move. Against Poirier, he was just trying to blast through the left hand like against Diaz, but he was standing up like a boxer. There was no that karate stance where he was in and out. And obviously, the calf kicks destroyed him because, for some reason, him and John Kavanagh didn't look at the side that calf kicks are in now, and that's the thing to do to damage the fighter you're fighting against. And it's sad to see him get knocked out because I remember meeting him back at UFC Manchester. You know what I mean? And it was nice. It was pissing down the rain, and I shouted at him and I go, "You're the next champion." And he was like, "My man," give me a hug. You know what I mean? You forget about those things like that. But I met Chael Sonnen and Michael Bisping that night as well.
Yeah.
But there was so much about him, and he was, I don't know. I like the cocky, arrogant Conor. I don't like the dad Conor where it's all nicey, give me your hot sauce. He's
a businessman now, and I think with all the other stuff going on outside. So, right, Chris, I think it's a perfect time to close out. Where can the viewers find you across the socials, my friend?
Nowhere. You can find me on Twitter at Van Hume, and you can find me on Facebook, Chris Velasquez Hume. That's about it, really. I don't use anything else.
That's perfect, man. It's all good. You can find me at StewieP1 on the Twitter. I haven't got the greatest of followings on there. Instagram is Stu's Wrestling Podcast with no apostrophe S on Stu's. You can't do it on there. And then Stu's Wrestling Podcast on Facebook. We will be setting up a group on Facebook for this show predominantly. I've been posting this here, there, and everywhere. It's gone on the Wrestling Podcast one. So, yeah, another episode of Powered 4 Big Fight Weekly in the books. Thank you for viewing, sharing, watching. We're enjoying doing it. And we'll see you guys for episode 2 this time next week, 6 p.m.
See you later.
There's one man with potentially a better winning record than Conor Noir. What? He's cashing in. Conor Noir does not look happy, does not look comfortable right now. For the first time in his title reign, I think Conor Noir feels like he is facing a legitimate threat right now. Sammy Smooth is ready for this.
Very ready. He's encouraging him to ring the bell. And there is the bell.
Conor Noir looks... TJ, I don't think I've ever seen Conor Noir look this uncomfortable in a ring before.
Ready.
Oh! He refused to say he was ready to... Oh, yeah, now he's ready.
Now ring the bell.
He's ready.
Of course.